Good morning. It's Saturday, September 10th, 2022. I'm Larissa. Ooh. So, last night, so frustrating. I was actually sleeping through the night, right? I slept past 1:30 when I normally wake up, only to have an alarm on my phone go off at 2 a.m. that I had set last week for something else entirely to remind me to watch something. Oh, so I've been awake since 2 a.m. Oh, drifting in and out, right? Asleep. It's the weekend. What have I got going on this weekend? Some stuff. Our stove is going to get picked up to be refurbished. And I'm excited about that, I guess. Working on a new garment. This one's not for sale, it's for somebody in particular. So I've got that going on too. Maybe I'll mop the floor in the living room so we can do yoga on Sunday. Maybe. My hair smells nice. I took a shower last night before I went to bed, and I wound my hair up on top of my head before I went to sleep. And it's dry now, and it smells nice. There's somebody out in the pasture this morning. I saw them over there. It wasn't Omar. He was in the bathroom when he first got up. He was in the bathroom. I was looking out the window, and I saw somebody walking up through the pasture. So who knows? I have to look and see if they got caught on the camera or not. Wonder what they were doing out over there. Wonder what they were poking around at. What they were destroying, right? Trying to go after my chickens. People do shitty things. They do. They do really shitty things. We have this guest cabin, right? And somebody was staying in it, right? They were breaking in at night and getting in it. They were breaking in the back window. Oh, and the cops were like, "Oh, call us when it's happening." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I'm going to do sit up all night and watch and wait so I can call. It's like, so what we did to remedy that is I strung Christmas lights inside and outside on the house, and they are plugged in and on 24/7. So it'd be really noticeable. You won't be able to sleep in there unless they're unplugged, because they're strung up all through inside the cabin too, right? So there's lights on in there 24/7. So they haven't been breaking in and sleeping in there since. But after I did that, there was a bunch of stuff destroyed on the property, a bunch of my garden, right? And somebody this year stole all of my apricots, right? Picked them before they were ripe. All of them. There were hundreds of apricots on that tree. Omar tried to tell me the bees ate them. Like, bullshit. One measly hive of bees did not eat an entire tree of apricots. No. No. I think I'll pick some herbs today. There's the episode that needs to be cut. I got a bunch of basil out there and cut back some more oregano. And some rosemary. Some sage and some thyme. That's what I got going on out there. Oh, and maybe some lemon balm. I'll cut some lemon balm. And maybe I will seed those de arbol chilies that I didn't seed the other day when I was seeding chilies. Oh my God, my hands were on fire. I ended up soaking my hands in milk, powdered milk. I didn't want to waste the milk in the fridge that Omar uses for the cereal. So, yeah. So when you're seeding peppers, I don't normally, they don't normally burn my hands anymore, but it was the quantity, and some of the, like I said, the puyas were extremely hot. My hands were all on fire down in between my fingers and stuff. And oh my gosh. So I used Tecnu, scrubbed my hands real good, like 3-4 times with Tecnu. And then I soaked them in reconstituted powdered milk because the base neutralizes the acid. And after I soaked my hands in the reconstituted powdered milk for like an hour, and then scrubbed my hands one more time with the Tecnu, then it went away. But it was interesting because my fingers were like, they were still spicy. Like I this, and like around my cuticles and stuff, I could taste the spice. I could taste the capsaicin. It was just down to a level where my hands weren't sensitive to it anymore. So if you're seeding chilies, just be warned. Anyway, might do the de arbors today or tomorrow, and then grind them down too. And see if I can get them in a smaller container because they're in the biggest container. The pollen count is very high here, and my eyes feel gooey because of it. California. Such a weird place. Ugh. Having spasm in my lower back and down my leg right now. I don't know. I've been reading out loud the On Liberty by John Stuart Mill. So when I read books, right, I make a playlist so that they're all continually in order in one place. So if you watch my channel and you're enjoying the books, right, or you like, I have them in order so that they're real easy, right? Let's go to the playlists and find the title, and then you can listen to all of the chapters in order. Reading On Liberty, and I've read it before. Like I said, all of the books that I'm reading, I've read before. They're not a cold read. I've read these books. I'm just sharing them because I think they're worth sharing. But the last chapter in particular, he's talking about the Catholic Church. You know, I was raised Catholic, and the Catholic Church is extremely abusive. Extremely abusive. The priests and the community, it's really quite insidious the way they emotionally, spiritually, and mentally abuse people who within the church who they either want to control because they don't like what they say, or if they think somebody, like, people are identified before they die as potential sainthood, right? And they really abuse those people. They really abuse those people. And or if you or if they think you're having, it's, possible that you're having some sort of like divine intervention in your life, meaning that you're accessing esoteric or mystical knowledge, they'll abuse you. They'll abuse you. And they do that particularly to women. And one of the methods that they use is within community, saying that that woman is a witch, and then accusing you of witchcraft. And it's ridiculous. I used to sit with a meditation group at a convent in Santa Rosa at a place called the Angela Center. At the time, I was sitting with 3 different groups for meditation. There was a group out at Osmosis Spa that was by invitation by the owner, a guy named Michael Stusser, and it was an early morning meditation. It was once a week. My husband and I went to that together, and then I was sitting with a group at the Unitarian Universalist congregation where I was attending, and then the Angela Center, right? A group called Julian Cell, a bunch of women, and there was a woman there, Suzanne, who was also from Pittsburgh, originally born in Pittsburgh, like me, and she was like, she told me a long time, she's like, you be careful. She's like, they'll drug you. And she's like, so I almost had to be drugged the one time. And I'm like, you almost had to be drugged? And she's like, oh yeah, they'll come after you. That's all of the women in this group. They're like, we're watched. That's what she told me. And there was another woman in there also named Susan, who was a therapist. And I had met her before I started attending Julian Cell. So I can't remember, how was it that I came to how was it that I came to the Julian Cell? Somebody told me about it. Because it wasn't highly public. It wasn't a highly publicized thing. They did writing workshops and things there, and it was a retreat center. Anyway, it was interesting because like the first time I showed up, there was this other woman, Susan, as well, and I had met her going to see, like, I had seen her as a therapist a couple times, and she told, and after her office was broken into and my files were taken after I had only seen her twice. Morning. Morning. Thank you. Oh, my just brought me coffee. After I'd seen her twice, and then her office was broken into, and then I saw her a couple more times, and she told me that she didn't think there was anything wrong with me, and she didn't think she could be my therapist anymore. And I was like, okay. She told me that she didn't think she could be unbiased in listening, which I thought was very professional. I think she was also kind of scared because her office got broken into, and she told me that only 2 people's files were stolen, and mine was one of them. And when I was 14, I was approached by a priest from the Vatican. He told me he was from the Vatican. His name was Father Joseph. And he asked me at that time if if I had ever entertained the idea of entering the convent. And I said no. And he said, well, he says, if you wanted to, he said, you could study and work anywhere in the world you wanted to. When I was 14. And I said, no, I said, I had never thought about being a nun. I said, but I had wanted to be a priest. There had been many times I thought, I wish I could be a priest. And I said that to him, and he laughed at me. And he said, oh, we'll cure you of that. Yeah. He had the cape on and everything. And that short cape over the shoulder thing. He had very expensive shoes. I remember that. I remember sitting next to him and looking at his shoes and being like, you got really expensive shoes for a priest. I remember thinking that. They were shiny black dress shoes. Very fancy shoes for a priest. They were Italian. I'm sure they were. So, well, I love Jesus and all. I've had my fill of church and abuse from the church, abuse from church groups. I did for a while. I was part of a group. I was going to this thing called Road to Emmaus, and it was a scripture study, and I was doing that because I was presenting liturgy. I was cantering, right? And so I thought it was important that I be prepared for doing that, you know? And so I was doing this Road to Emmaus thing. Well, there was a guy that was in the group who was also in the choir. And I don't know, he thought that, I don't know, he was a creepy old man. Anyway, he thought I was going there to hang out with him. And he's the one who had told me about it. But the only reason I was going was because, like I said, I was cantering. They were all messed up. And then I did another Bible study group, and there was this girl there who just kept going on and on and on about all the aborted babies and her brother with mental illness, and she was going on and on telling all this personal information about her brother. And I'm like, this isn't a therapy group, and does your brother know that you're out in public? Because she was using his name, talking about him and his mental illness. I'm like, I told her the one time, I said, you're the one with the problem. I said, I doubt your brother has the problem. I said, sounds to me like you have a problem. She got all upset with me. I quit going to that group too. And also the guy that was leading it with his wife, Ray Gulka, he the one time, everybody took turns bringing in a snack to share at, and one time, I think it was I that brought in cupcakes. Somebody brought in cupcakes. It might have been me, because I was baking muffins and cupcakes. But she went to go take a cupcake, and he's like, you're going to eat that? She's like, oh, I guess I'm overweight. And it was just like, he belittled her for being fat. She wasn't, she wasn't skinny, but like, it's like, geez, woman's like 65 years old. Give her a fucking break, Baldy. Ugh, so I quit going to that group after that. I didn't want to be part of that. So yeah, I don't go to meditation groups anymore, and I don't go to church anymore. Because it doesn't matter what denomination. Like I went a few times to True Vine Ministry in Oakland as well, and that was just, they spent half of their service collecting money for the pastor. Seriously. Yeah. And then they had their fingers in all the political stuff in town, and they had something to do with Libby Schaaf getting elected, because he's like, oh yeah, we got her in our pocket. I'm just like, oh. I quit hanging out with them after he said that to me. I'm like, wow, nope, no, thank you. And then this other woman that was at that group, she belonged, were they the Episcopalians or the Lutherans, or I can't remember. But I went to her church with her the one time. She's like, why don't you come to my church? Oh, you're all lunatics too. I don't know. And then what happened to me over here at Dignity Health, the Dominican hospital. The Dominicans. I'm not talking about Dominican Republic. I'm talking about Dominican denomination, the Dominican nuns. The way it's a Catholic hospital. They're abusive. They're totally, totally, totally abusive. I don't trust anybody that works there. Nope. And a Unitarian Universalist, I'm not a Unitarian. And I didn't understand the difference when I started attending there. I didn't understand the difference between Unitarianism and Trinitarianism, and I'm definitely a Trinitarian. I'm not a Unitarian. So I quit going there too, once I figured out that I'm not a Unitarian. Also, I got tired of the atheists at the Unitarian Universalist congregation. The atheists and the pagans were really annoying. Yep. And I couldn't understand. Like it's like I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna become one of this group, and it's like how do you? I don't understand how they reconcile being, oh, they still say, oh, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Jew, or I'm this, or I'm that, but I'm a Unitarian Universalist. Like, how can you be a religion if you're also one of those other religions? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, and they're not a religion, they're a club. But I'm definitely not a Unitarian. Like I said, I'm a Trinitarian. I believe in 3 distinct parts of the whole. I don't believe it's all the same thing. So, anyway, sit up and have this coffee. My morning thoughts. My morning thoughts. Oh, my hair's all wild. Meanwhile, in England, Church of England, very interesting. We're talking about the Church of England. The Anglican Church is technically under the Pope again, and it has been for about 10 years now. So, that happened like 10 years ago. Church of England. Like, I don't know how they reconcile all that shit either. I mean, the whole thing with the split, and it's like reading. I've been thinking about all of this stuff reading On Liberty again, right? And he's talking about the Calvinist Reformation and Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation, and the split of the Church of England from the Catholic Church came because of Henry VIII and the Pope not being willing to grant another divorce, another annulment for him. And enough was enough. Like, how he had a bazillion wives and he kept killing them, right? And so that's why the Church of England's split off from the Catholic Church. And the Orthodox Church was a split, not so much over doctrine in the beginning as it was over who was the leader, and that was over the split. That was really about where Caesar was, where the head of the capital of the Roman Empire, right? It's Istanbul, not Constantinople, right? Byzantium. But there are doctrinal differences between Orthodox and Catholicism. They don't follow the Pope. They're more scattered. They have their patriarchs of each heritage, right? Like the patriarchs of the Greek Orthodox, patriarchs of the Ukrainian Orthodox, patriarchs of the Russian Orthodox, right? So you go into an Orthodox church. It's like, well, what kind of Orthodox is it? There's a Syrian, called Church of Antioch, the Orthodox Antioch Orthodox Church. And those are the Syrian Orthodox, and there's that sect there's one of their churches around here. There's 2 Orthodox churches just down the street from each other, which is kind of funny. It's like they can't even. There aren't that many. There are far fewer Orthodox than there are Catholics, right? And I just thought it was funny. You have 2 Orthodox churches within 5 miles of each other because they can't even get along amongst themselves, right? It's like part of how they propagandize. There's the Romanian Orthodox Church as well, and that's how Putin started destabilizing the areas in Ukraine, starting with Crimea, was through church propaganda, stuff like that. All of that. And then the Russian embassy closed in San Francisco, and they burned all of their paperwork. It was a big deal. All the Russian diplomats just up and left, and the building there was fires in the building. They burned all kinds of shit before they left. And then, lo and behold, they invaded Crimea, and the U.S. government distracted the U.S. people from knowing about it by all of the Russia interfered with the election stuff. All of that was over energy. All of that was over energy because Crimea has thorium mines, and that's why Putin he built the bridge. It's the longest bridge in the world from across the Crimean Peninsula to mainland Russia, right? And so he told the people in Crimea, he's like, oh, we're gonna make things here so much better. This is for tourism. You're gonna have a better economy, and people there bought into it, right, at first. And then they had kind of like a little civil war that happened, right? And then people were all upset because all of the business that Putin said was going to come in for tourism and things didn't materialize. It was all really just about having that bridge there so he could drive trucks over for the mining that they were doing in Sevastopol, and which is on the Crimean Peninsula on the delta where the mines are. I've been following this for a long time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And having this crazy energy crisis, right? All across Europe and here in the US too. It's global, right? Putin's causing all kinds of trouble. Greedy, greedy. Greedy, greedy, greedy. Telling everybody that Russia hasn't lost anything in the war, and all those dead Russian soldiers, all those young boys. Anytime you see them, those soldiers, I mean, sometimes you see older guys too, but a lot of children, young boys, teenagers, 19, 20 years old. Those are young kids. Those are young kids, aren't they? Being sent as cannon fodder. I wonder what their parents in Russia think. Dumbasses over here don't think it's a big deal that Brittany Griner is in the gulags over there. Can't wait to hear what she has to say if she gets out, right? Meanwhile, there was it Lonzo Ball who got caught shoplifting in China and got arrested, and people were like, "Oh my God, save Lonzo Ball!" Was it Lonzo or was it the other one? And Trump got him out, but Brittany Griner, she's in the gulag, right? Can't wait for her to come home. Like I said, if she makes it out, and tell all these idiots over here what a Russian prison is, right? And that poor woman just was carrying around her medicine. Just carrying around her medicine. Was it cannabis oil? I'm sure she was taking that for joint pain and stuff. I'm sure she was. I'm sure she wasn't getting high. Oh, ridiculous. Ridiculous. If she makes it out. If she makes it out. Anyway. I don't know if I'm going to read today. I don't know if I'm going to read today or not. The next book I'm going to read, I think, is going to be The Consolation of Philosophy, which is really interesting. I was telling Omar about it. He's like, what is this book? What is this book, Consolation of Philosophy? It's a really interesting book. It's by this guy, Boethius, um, from 1500s. And so, like, he was from a middle-class family, right, at the time. And he was literate, right, which was still kind of unusual, right? And so he was getting work, right, with a wealthier elite family, um, because he was literate, because he could read and write. And I can't remember. I have to when I read the introduction, I'm pretty sure it says more about it, his history. But what happened was he became their patsy, right? Because they didn't want any of their people going to jail for anything, and so he took the fall for something that this political family this political family did, and they turned on him, and he was put on trial and put to death, right? Sentenced to death, and they allowed him to write this book while he was in prison and he was being tortured, right? Like, he was going through severe torture. And so he wrote this book, Consolation of Philosophy, where Lady Philosophy and Lady Fortune come to speak to him. And it's a dialogue. It's a dialogue between he and these two. I wouldn't call them imaginary, like almost hallucinatory um, visitations. Like, he's having this. It's like an inner dialogue kind of thing, and it's a masterful work of philosophy and illustration of the amazing ability of the human psyche, right? Like, to look at it from a psychological perspective, it's very, very interesting. And so it's in this book, in his writing, he is dealing with what he knows is his impending execution. So it's like somebody on death row writing, who's innocent, right? And he's trying to console himself. And that's why it's called the consolation of philosophy, because Lady Philosophy comes and speaks to him. Very interesting. Really good book. Really good book. So I think it's the next one I'm going to read. I think it's going to either be that or the arguments for and against anarchism. Those essays. Those are dense too. I think it's going to be Consolation of Philosophy. Really good book. Anyway, finish my coffee, and then it'll be time to drop a deuce.